Well, welcome to another episode of the Dead Presidents Club, where we talk unfiltered and unashamedly about all things money. I think money is just a game, so I want you to learn the rules so that you can be a master. And today with us, we have another master of the game, at least I would say so. Samia is with us. She is awesome. She's an entrepreneur, an author, a public speaker. I just found out she's a health enthusiast, so we can even talk about that. That'll be fun.
Yes.
We actually share a lot of similarities in our backstory. She was not only is she a business owner today, but she spent years working in the finance industry as a financial advisor, right?
Yes.
And so we kind of share that corporate finance background, gone entrepreneur. So that'll be interesting.
We need a support club for that.
We do need a support club. I'm still trying to detox off that W-2, but she's written and released a book called The Money Handbook. Which is an expression of her passion to help people learn how to manage money. And as she says, marry their faith to finances.
Yes.
So that's very cool. Samia, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us, so I probably didn't do you like enough justice because you guys, you and your husband do all sorts of stuff.
No, that was great. I'm going to bring you everywhere I go now.
Okay,
You can
perfect.
Just open me up.
Awesome. Great. I'm great at that. An opener. It's perfect. Tell me a little bit more. Like, tell me about your history. What's the journey? Take us back as far as you want. Give us a little bio, beyond the footnotes here.
Yeah, I really have a passion to help people like put financial strategies in place for their life. I think that there's so much fear around money because most people didn't learn how to use it growing up, or how to save, or how to invest, or really even debt. Like they just would think it was bad.
Ooh.
And so I know it's like the
D
buzzword.
word. I actually literally put in my notes for questions for you. I go, at some point, we're going to talk about the D word. So I'm glad you already brought it up. So go ahead.
Let's just get it up.
Yeah.
And,
the D word for me is Dave Ramsey, but that's different.
Oh, good old Dave.
Anyways,
Good
I
old
digress.
Dave. Yeah.
I digress.
I mean, he's a household name. I give him that.
That's true.
So I grew up in a traditional Jewish home.
Okay.
So I was bat mitzvahed. I can read and write Hebrew, and you have Hebrew on is that your ring finger?
It's my ring finger.
Is that like instead of a ring?
Yeah. So that's the result of losing 3 traditional rings.
You have lost 3
of them.
wedding rings?
I know I'm not a good person, but Jacqueline finally was like, it's
Go
time.
get a tattoo.
Go get a tattoo. So yeah, it's funny. You came in here and you immediately read it.
Yeah.
Most people, honestly, when I'm on like planes and stuff, they think it's Arabic.
Really?
Yeah. I've had a lot of people are
It's Hebrew.
yeah, well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad, because that would have been bad news for me if it like wasn't what I thought it was.
When I first came to the studio, he's like, "Oh, you read Hebrew?" And he put his hand out, and I'm like, "Baruch." It
Yep.
means blessed.
That's right.
You passed the test. It's definitely
Good.
Hebrew. The tattoo artist did not get the wrong language when he
Perfect.
Googled it. So anyhow, grew up traditionally in a Jewish home, and money was talked about all the time, like super normal. Investments and saving and giving. Giving is like just part of the culture. It's a very generous culture. And so there was just no shame around it. So it was just like a very normal conversation all the time. And it was just one of those things where even getting into the stock market or real estate, it was always like legacy building, like be the landlord, not the tenant.
Okay.
Kind
So
of
that was
thing.
ingrained in you from the get.
Like just this is how it is.
Got it.
So I was just fortunate enough to sort of grow up in a household that had education about it. Because, some people have parents who make money and have savings and 401ks, but they never taught them. They never like passed it down.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. There was a study done that 70% of generational wealth gets lost in the second generation, between the second and the third.
Wow.
Because of lack of literacy, lack of knowing what to do with it. They just blow through it. And so I really just have a heart for people to get a hold of what legacy is and what generational wealth looks like and the steps that can take you there. And I know you're like big into real estate, and it's wonderful. And that's definitely, and my husband and I do it as well, right? Yeah. It's absolutely a solid avenue to do that. There's the stock market too. If people don't have the stomach and the thick skin, so to say, of like, owning properties and things like that, there is a play to invest as well, or to do both, or all
See,
of
it's
that.
so funny you say that, because when I think about the stock market, I got out of the stock market last year finally, and I was like, I'm done. because I don't have this.
R.I.P.
I
stock
literally, I
market.
cashed in my retirement. I went all in on real estate. I'm not saying that's the path.
Yeah.
That's just what I did because I can't stomach the stock market anymore. So it's funny
that's
you say
so
that. Like
funny.
I'm all in on
Yeah.
real estate because I feel safe in real estate. But
You're
you're
like,
totally right. It's like a personality thing too.
It's totally a personality thing. It's like some people are employees and
Yep.
some people are owners.
Yep.
Some people are there to support the vision and some people cast the vision.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I've talked a lot. I mean, I've gotten a little bit of hate on social for making comments about, the idea of being a slave to your W-2. I use that as a kind of a shocking statement to
Bad PR
I
is still
know,
PR.
exactly. But I'm trying to get people to think
Yeah.
differently. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, if everybody became an owner, we'd have no ecosystem.
Right.
So it is
Yeah.
about knowing what your comfort level is and what your personality is and what your
100%.
interest is. So I think that's a great point.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, so on that note, I've got a lot of questions for you. I've been reading your book and I'll jump into that, but let's start. I like to do some questions from audience submissions. Right now it's just through social media. So if you got questions, you can DM me or send us an email. So the first one at the end of the episode, we'll do an agree, disagree, but I'll probably have to pull one up right now because I gotta preface this one with an agree, disagree because you may or may not agree with me on this. But the
Okay.
question is, why should I not pay off my primary residence if I don't plan to move? So before we answer the question, I'll throw an agree, disagree to you. You should pay off your primary residence as quick as possible. Agree or disagree?
Depends.
Oh, okay. Hit me with it. Hit me with it. I love it. I love it. Depends on
I'm
what.
not as black and white as you, Michael.
I know.
If you have a 15-year, no.
Okay.
Because I think that it also depends on what your interest rate is. So a lot of people watching, hopefully, are locked into like 2.5, 3.5, tops 4
Mm-hmm.
interest rate, in which case investments can make you more money than that. So it would make more sense to keep your mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, let's say you're like, I have $200,000 sitting around and that's the balance on my mortgage. Well, you could take the 200 and buy income producing properties or throw it in like a tax strategy that gives you 9 to 12% a year.
Yep.
Whereas if you sink it into your house, you were only paying 4.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's the spread. But the other thing I would say is there is a study that has been done that women, not men,
Okay.
but women specifically, when they don't have a personal mortgage, are emotionally happier.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
more at peace. It's
Jacqueline-
something.
Jacqueline, don't listen to this episode, please. Please don't listen to this.
I love your wife, Jacqueline. She's such a love. So, anyways, just, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
But there is, from like a numbers standpoint, it does make more sense if you have a low interest rate on your home to not pay it off and to use capital to have a rate on your return.
So in that sense,
But I'm not going to judge somebody.
yeah.
Like if they sleep better at night because they have no mortgage,
1000%.
but they have a ton of loans on investment properties, bless you. Like
Yeah.
if you don't.
Yeah. And if you don't invest and you're happy with your paid off life and your little nest egg, like good for you. Like to your point,
Yeah.
you have to make a decision for yourself. But the math of it is what you just said. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. So like my black and white statement is why pay off anything when I can get better returns somewhere else.
Right.
But to your point, that philosophy may change in the coming years. If people are buying mortgages at 7-8% interest in the next few years and, the return on investment is
Like-
even par, that's not going to make a lot
It
of
doesn't make
sense.
sense.
Pay down the.
That's why it depends.
It does depend. So she flipped the script on me, and I will also answer with it depends. I agree. And I will take into consideration from this the happy wife, happy life,
Emotional
because
well-being.
my wife would absolutely love if our home was paid off. She would love it. She is like, yeah, I know you're her best friend right now. So I will commit to take that into serious
It's
consideration.
like confession time.
I know, but
on
I
the
got
Dead
2.
Presidents
I know,
Club
but I got
podcast.
2.75% interest.
Oh,
So
you're fine.
I know I
It's like
can't.
free money.
Yeah, but maybe I could buy something else cash and move into that. Like maybe that's the trade
Yeah.
off because the rates suck right now. So
Yeah, that's a true statement.
all right. So why should I not pay off my primary residence? That's the answer. It's not that you shouldn't. It's that, the math is if I'm getting, sub 4 on my mortgage, I can get conservatively 8 just about anywhere else, and in some places far more than that. So that's the idea. The other thing, which we can talk about, at some point that I find particularly interesting with the real estate play is the returns long-term are actually more than just the cash on cash or the ROI return, right? Because you've got
You
the
have an
tax,
asset.
you've got the asset, and the future value is determined, or the appreciation is determined on the value, not the cash in the actual asset.
Right.
And you've got the tax benefits. So yeah, maybe I get 8, 10, 12%,
Right.
on the property. But long term, I'm getting far more than that because I'm, reducing my tax liability and I'm appreciating on a larger asset than what I actually would put cash in the market, right?
Mhm.
You agree?
Agreed.
Perfect.
I agree on that.
I
Yeah.
like it. All right, second question.
Okay.
This is an easy one to answer, but not an easy one for a lot of people. I'll kick this one to you. What exactly is a credit score? Like, this is the quote, so this isn't my English, but like, I think I have a good one, but I don't know what it actually indicates or how I can control it. So
Okay.
high level credit scores.
High level credit score simply is a report card on how well you pay things off after you purchase them on time, paying them on time.
I like that.
So credit cards, cell phones, your mortgage, personal loans, anything you take money out for, or you advance, like a credit card is basically paying it before you pay it,
Mhm.
It's just a report card on, hey, did you pay that off?
Mhm.
Did you make that payment on time?
Absolutely.
Are you responsible?
Are you responsible?
Did you get an A+ or an F+?
So that's a great like high level synopsis.
Yeah.
Let's go a couple layers deeper because it's not just the scores. So first of all, the spread of score is what, 350 to 850 or something
Yeah, it's
like
pretty
that.
big.
It's a pretty big spectrum that you can have. They say that like good is anything like above 700, right?
Mhm.
That's kind of the good category. But there are more factors than just paying your bills on time, right? So what are a few other factors that
it's how much debt you actually have out.
Right. So
Is
debt
another
to
one.
limit ratios.
Mhm.
That's a big one.
For instance, like medical debt and things like that, and
Mhm.
can add up. And it's also what happens is like when you go to purchase something, they'll use your social security number and they'll be like, oh, it's going to do your credit score because they're checking to see, do you have a car loan? It's sort of like this financial picture of what money is owed. Essentially.
Yeah. And how you're managing your capacity to borrow, right?
Mhm.
So they're looking when you apply for a loan, part of what they're checking is how many inquiries do you have? How many loans have you applied for,
Yeah.
right? Those cost you points because people that are applying all the time, generally speaking, that would be an indicator that they're desperate for loans or credit or things like that. And I think the big one that people don't realize is what you just said. It's the limit to the usage to limit ratio. I think that's like 35% weight on your credit score. So a common thing that people don't realize is that of your total available credit, say on a credit card, if you've got a $10,000 limit, you really never want to exceed 30% of that. Right. That's
or
the
it
big,
looks back, or just paid off at the end of the month.
or paid off at the end of the
Yeah.
month. But that, if you've got, people don't realize like you could have $5,000, dollar balance on a $10,000 credit card and you think you've got all this room, but your credit's actually getting suppressed
Mhm.
because it's too highly
Or
leveraged.
you've maxed out like 5 cards.
Yeah,
and
well,
you're like,
yeah,
why
that's-
is my credit
yeah.
card? My credit
And listen,
score
and I've
400?
lived, and I'll tell you this, I've lived in that world. I flip houses, so I've maxed out cars more times than I care to
Like,
admit.
don't worry, it's gonna get paid off when the house sells.
Yeah, I promise. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with lenders where I'm like, no, we've got the money over here, it's there, and I'm like, it's just going to be a rotation, and you have to like sell them on my situation sometimes, but thankfully, it generally works out. But
And that's why when people listening today, like when you've gone to go get a mortgage, your mortgage broker will say to you, do not have your credit checked for anything
It's a
until
great point.
after you buy this house.
Yep.
Don't buy anything. Don't add any debt. Don't let it get pulled because it's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
And this is why.
So I saw a meme. That's funny you bring that up. I saw a meme recently. It was like something to the effect of it was like a real estate agent.
Okay.
And they're like, when you see your client who just went into escrow with a brand new car,
You're like, no!
and they're like, yeah, literally. And it's like, because that's what people do. It's like they get into their house, they settle in, the money, they feel like situated, and then they go out and buy
Shopping
some
spree.
cool. Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, do that if you want. Just wait till the loan closes.
Right.
Wait till the loan closes. That's important. So good. One more question.
Are we still on agree or disagree?
No,
We've
agree.
moved on.
Yeah,
we've moved on.
Do you
Okay.
want to do agree or disagree
No,
right now?
keep going.
Because I just pulled one up because I wanted to see like where we were at, if this was going to be
Okay.
a good conversation or not. So the third question, third and last question,
Okay.
this is also in reference to a couple of things I've been saying online that have got me in a little trouble. Why do you keep saying $1 million is not enough or it's not a lot of money?
Oh my God, it's not enough money.
Thank you. Isn't it better than nothing?
It is better than nothing. But, there is something out there called tax-free bonds. And for example, they're right now they're between 4 and 5% tax free. So simply they are that you purchase a bond and let's say you spend $1 million and you get, it depends on what bond it is, but you get it, we'll call it 5% for easy math, guys. You get 5% tax free. So that's $50,000 a year tax free. And the million, it fluctuates a little, but not a lot. That's about what you're going to get. 5 to 7% max a year. That happens to be tax free, but even if you did 7% taxable, now you're like back at 5 anyway. I mean, how many couples? I feel like 50 grand a year is not enough money for a family. It's not really a living wage. Like you can get by, but the cost of living is super high right now. Groceries alone. Have you gone and seen what eggs are cost? Like what is happening?
No, I don't go to the grocery store.
Okay, well talk to your wife, Jacqueline, because eggs are like $25 for a dozen. It's like out of control right now.
That's not true.
I'm exaggerating, but they're a lot.
Thank God. I just had a small aneurysm. I'm like,
You're like,
wait,
no more scrambled egg burritos for me in
exactly.
the morning. No, eggs have gone up by a lot. They've doubled.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Inflation is real right now. So the point is, yes, it's better than nothing. And you can live on it, but the CDC says that the average lifespan is around 80 years, but I think that that's going to continually increase. I think it's going to get to 100. And then I think I really believe it's going to get to 120. And, being raised Jewish, biblically, the Lord actually said, you will live 120 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm like, why are we living 80? God said we're supposed to live 120. Don't take away 40 years off my life.
I
no.
know.
So anyways, the point is people are living longer.
Yep.
And it just isn't going to stretch as long. And if, the average person has almost $7,000 worth of credit card debt. Right. And so that is where people like Dave Ramsey come into play because he's like, let me help you get out of that pit and just get to level.
Right.
And so it just depends who your audience is. So someone with $6,000 or $7,000 in credit card debt and their paycheck to paycheck, $1 million is a lot of money to them.
Sure.
But in the scheme of things, from an aerial view, if you're 60 or 70 and you're with your spouse and you have your children and your grandchildren, it's not much of a legacy and there's not much to leave, especially if you don't have a house that's paid off by then. Speaking of the paid off house, I really do think you should have no personal mortgage by the time you're 65.
Okay. That's fair.
So if you're 50 years old and listening to this, you have 15 years, just make it happen.
Okay.
Because once you're at that place, it's so dumb to have a mortgage. You want as much income as possible so that you can look to the generation behind you and start it. Because the more money you have, the more impact you have.
Right.
So it's just usable capital, whatever that looks like, whether it's buying properties in your grandkids' names or I don't even care.
Yeah.
College, cars, weddings. It's just I think it's important to have a lot of cash flow when you're in that stage of life.
What if I'm 65 and I'm listening to this and my house isn't paid off?
There's no shame. Put a plan in place and pay it off.
Okay.
Make an extra payment every year. Figure it out.
It's good. Just side note, just because I know people in this situation.
Yeah.
What if the bank comes to me and goes, well, what if I just give you a reverse mortgage?
So I don't love reverse mortgages because now they own your house. So reverse mortgage simply means a company will come in and they essentially, you sign the deed over to them. They own your home, but they pay you money every month until you die. So they're betting you die
before,
and you're betting you live longer. It's kind of like life insurance. So my husband's grandfather did a reverse mortgage. So he's I don't even know, he's 90, and he's super healthy and he's Italian and Italians live forever. So he gets money every month. But the problem is when he passes away, nobody in the family gets the house.
The bank gets it.
The bank gets it.
Yep.
And I'm just his house is worth so much. He lives in Florida. Please, do you guys know what happened in the real estate market in Florida? It
bonkers,
10x'd.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's such a bummer because
it's short-sighted.
Right.
And if the goal of this, and again, I think we all agree, and most people listening would agree, the goal of money is really generational. And if it's not, then you need to revisit your philosophy on money because it really is about future generations. And a reverse mortgage, although maybe immediate situation or immediate benefit. It's not a long-sighted play for future generations.
I think it's like last resort.
Yeah, of course. If it's desperation, it's the same way I felt like we bought our house I bought my first house in 2007 before the mortgage crash, the crisis,
like
right?
a year before,
like 6 months before.
My gosh.
And we lost like 200,000 in equity, basically overnight. And all my financial advisors were like, well, just foreclose. Like you're not going to get the equity back by the time your credit's repaired, like just foreclose. And for me, I was in a position where I could still make my payment. Like I didn't lose my job. And what I always said was, hey, no shade on people that are in situations and they had to foreclose, they had to give their house up, short sale, whatever. But like I made a decision that it would be a last resort for me because of what, and I think reverse mortgage is the opposite example of that. Like, hey, exhaust all of your other options.
Right.
And then, no shade if you've got to do it.
Usually with reverse mortgages, they target the elder population because they're on Social Security and they're on fixed income. So if they can give them an extra $1,500 to $2,000 a month, which is it moves the dial for them when we're talking $25,000, $30,000 a year.
Well, and a lot of times they'll give them a lump sum up front. And so like I've even heard some stories of some younger, like 60-year-olds that they've gotten talked into it because they can go buy a Corvette and get some extra money. And that's just like, now I'm living the retirement dream, right? I keep my house, I get paid to live in it, and I get a Corvette. And that's
who cares about the next generation?
Who cares? I want to drive fast and drink beer. So anyways, total sidetrack. So $1 million is not enough. And I agree with you. And the piece of it that I continue to bring up is we're not talking about inflation. Because at the end of the day, $1 million is worth 27% of what it was worth 40 years ago.
Oh, that's depressing.
Super depressing. So if we use history to tell us about our future, my $1 million is going to have a $270,000 value in 4 years.
It's just not going to have enough buying power.
No. And so even if I don't do what you propose, which is to put it in some fund that's giving me a 5% return, and I just chop it up over 40 years, I'm still living on $2,500 a month. Like it's just not enough money. And so again, is it better than nothing? Of course. The point here isn't don't save because you don't have $1 million. The point here is don't think $1 million is going to get you the life you want, right?
Yeah.
That's the point. So cool. Well, those are good questions. Let's jump into some nitty gritty. I've got some questions on the book, but before I get there, because you've got a financial advisory background, I want to talk about Robinhood for a minute. And Robinhood being the overarching umbrella for my ability to trade on my cell phone today with such easy access. I've done a couple of videos. I think you've seen a few of them. People are really upset with my opinion on this. And my opinion is very simple. The market was not designed for a direct-to-consumer trading platform that is so easily accessible. Wall Street was not built on this platform.
Right.
My issue is not access. My issue isn't everybody's like, oh, you're just gatekeeping and only the wealthy can invest. My attitude is this. If I don't have skin in the game, if I don't have a potential to lose as much as I have to gain, I shouldn't be allowed to be a part of controlling markets. And I think that that's what the Robinhood era has done, is it's given a ton of control to the mob mentality of what I've said everybody's pissed about, but 16 and 18-year-olds on Reddit that are bankrupting quality hedge funds based upon a social media following, not any financial services acumen. And so my attitude has been there should be, just like day traders, there should be some threshold that you have to have skin in the game. And I don't know, I've said 25,000, maybe that's not the number, that is the minimum qualifier before you're allowed to essentially self-directed trade on these platforms. What I'm not saying is that you can't go to a financial advisor, you can't get with an FSA, you can't invest. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just simply saying you haven't earned the right or the skin in the game to be self-directed. And that, for me, is both protecting the stability of the marketplace, the free marketplace, mind you, which everybody's like, it's a free market. Yes, I want to maintain the free market, but also I want to protect the investor, because most of the young people that got on the GameStop and the AMC and all these, kind of like phenomenons that happened, most of them didn't win. And so a lot of people lost a lot of money because they got on a hype train.
It's like crypto.
It's exactly like crypto, which is a whole nother topic. So that's my stump speech, just to give some context. But you've been an advisor. You come from that world. What are your thoughts?
I think it should be like a $10,000.
Okay.
I think 10 is the number.
So you agree that there should be some trading threshold.
I think that is wisdom. But if you think of places like Fidelity and Vanguard, even Merrill Lynch has something called Merrill Edge. It's free. You can go on and buy and sell. Like it's the platform. It's not just Robinhood. Like you could go on like any, pretty much, I can name off half a dozen, platforms and transfer some money in there from your checking account and just start buying ETFs and stocks and mutual funds and do all of that. And you can short things and
buy on margin.
I think margin is where there has to be more of a cap.
Sure.
I think that is actually more important than prove to us you have $10,000 or $25,000 liquid.
Oh, interesting.
I think that there has to be more regulation around the margin because that's really where people get hurt.
But do you think that, like, so let's just take the GameStop phenomenon we all know about. Do you think that a lot of those trades that ran that up were traded on margin?
I don't know. I would imagine.
Really?
Yeah.
See, because to me, trading on margin is a at least somewhat more sophisticated approach, right? It's not just like it's not as easy as just transferring money into my account.
It's true, but they let you do it. I think there needs to be like more. It has like things in place that qualify you.
Interesting.
Because it's essentially asset-based lending. So even sophisticated investors and people that have high net worth and have financial advisors at the JP Morgans and, all the firms that we know about and the Merrill Lynches of the world, and they have 10 million or 20 million bucks with them. They all have asset-based lending. They all have what we call margin, lines of credit based on their stock portfolio. So for easy math, if I have $1 million and I call my financial advisor and go, hey, I need a line of credit, I need some liquidity, they'll say, sure, we can lend you up to, depending on the firm, 60 to 80%, which means overnight, there's no credit check. You literally now have a second account available to you between $600,000 and $800,000 and a stock account that's $1 million. And that is why when you hear people go, oh, they bought that house cash, really? Or was it on their asset-based lending?
What are the general terms on that type of facility?
They're all under 3%.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like every major firm has it. You have to because the customer wants it. And
it's how billionaires do what they do tax-free, right? Because that money is tax-free.
Correct.
So, everybody's talking like freaking out about like Elon Musk buying Twitter. Well, it's not like Elon had 64 billion sitting in a checking account.
Yeah.
He borrowed against his portfolio.
That's
tax-free,
exactly right. And that's like macro.
Yep.
But micro, there's a lot of high net worth families that do the same thing. They have their portfolio and then they have a line of credit based on it. And, some places, when I was a financial advisor, it was 1.5%.
Wow.
It's like,
and
people
it's
are
like
buying houses with it. Oh, it's 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's like no questions asked because their collateral is your stock portfolio. The issue is when the market goes down, you get notified and you have to start selling to your stock to pay it back so that the percentages stay where it's supposed to be. But most people just keep that line of credit open until they die and they pass it on to their kids, like literally. And they just pay the interest.
Yeah, it's tax-free money.
It's tax-free money. Some people pay it down, some don't. So that's the macro.
That's
macro.
The big, yeah. And look, like if you're listening to this and you're already pissed at me because I said that you can't trade, like she just brought up a couple of great points. Merrill Lynch, a widely accepted financial advisory services, has created a platform to help people stair-step their way into investing. Merrill Edge. You can get free, they're called financial solutions advisors. You can pick up the phone, talk to somebody for basically free, and they'll give you advice. So my issue again is not, everybody's like, well, screw the hedge funds. Well, first of all, hedge funds are made up of people. So like, there is that. But in the big picture, like I just want to maintain the integrity and the stability. And until the market has some sort of stability against that kind of Reddit style, stonk memes and all the stuff that's like, until the market has some sort of stability around it, I honestly, I don't want to play. And that's my prerogative and everybody else has theirs. But that's kind of been my attitude towards it, is there's got to be some sort of threshold. And a stat that should terrify you is, and you probably know this, but if you don't, it's really interesting, is less than 5% of day traders are profitable every year.
Is it really that low?
It's less than 5. So 95% of people that are self-declared professional investors are posting a loss every single year.
Oh, good Lord.
That I do way better than that at the blackjack table.
Right. Like go to Vegas, bet on red, have a nice dinner.
Literally.
Like, what are you doing?
Like, so to me, I'm like, and again, like a lot of that is these types of situations, but I'm just going like, if the people that are claiming to be smart enough to do this professionally are losing money in droves, like why are we letting our 18-year-old population with no financial education figure it out that early on?
I also don't really think the stock market is best utilized as a day trading platform. I actually think it's better for one stream of wealth building as something that you view long term.
Sure.
So when I was a financial advisor, we managed, it was like 200 or 300 million, which I know it sounds like a really big number, but
right.
Probably like 600 or 700 now because the market's like doubled since like 2010. But the point is, I dealt with a lot of like high net worth families. So you have like the parents in their 80s and then their kids in their 60s and then they have kids in their 40s. There's a lot of like generational wealth happening. So I learned a lot about like how they grow the wealth and then how they protect the wealth. And it's interesting because a lot of these plays are like 5-10 years. So yes, they owned apartment buildings and they owned parking garages and they were like, what? And they owned like storage unit facilities, but also between 20 and I would say 40% of whatever the net worth looked like, they had a stock market play. So I'm not like a tunnel vision, like put all your money here.
Sure.
It's like, okay, let's put it in a couple different places and hedge.
Yeah. And
so when I view the stock market, I don't view it as day trading. I view it as like long-term, even a dividend play, like, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, like what's the toothpaste that you use? What cell phone company are you like?
But do you not feel like there's, I agree with you, but do you not feel like the risk now is that because there's a little bit more volatility because there's a substantially higher, access threshold. Yeah. Like, do you not have concern that even if I buy a great company like Coca-Cola, that I might not lose my shorts from some crazy run?
Well, the interesting thing is some of these companies, they're international. They're in every single country. So yes, some shady stuff can go on in the US, but they have so much, I mean, we're talking billions of cash on hand and R&D. Even like if you look at Apple, if you Google Apple and the patent pending that they have like thousands of patents and ideas of things that maybe they might not launch all of it. But if you invest in companies that are like forward thinking and that hit every continent, you're in a better space than if you're like, I really love drinking Samuel Adams. Let's buy the beer stock. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I think, yes, I hear what you're saying. But there's some companies where it's like it won't affect them as much and the rebound will be quicker.
Yeah. We're not moving Coca-Cola like we moved GameStop. Right.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so again, to your point though, like that's even that little nugget is financial education that 95% of people that are in the market right now don't have. And so that's more my point. I agree with you, but I just think most people are not thinking this way.
I'm like, buy what's boring.
Yeah. Do you follow Cody Sanchez?
Yes.
Cody Sanchez, Boring Businesses. I love it.
Yes.
You can be the boring stock lady.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff in your book. So I've been reading your book. Cool. There's a lot of great stuff. And what I love about the book, and maybe kind of give us a high level, synopsis or pitch us on it a little bit. But for me, it's like super practical finance.
Super practical.
Which is awesome. And what I also love about it is that it's not one-sided. It's not like what you've said. There's a lot of portions of the book where you're like, hey, if you do this, then this is the path. If you choose this, then this is the path. Yeah. So give us kind of the high level, and then I've got some questions that I'd love to talk through just from the book, and then we can go from there. But kind of give us the why and what you're hoping to accomplish with it, and really who's the book for.
Yeah, I wrote this book because I really wanted to help people that just did not have a financial education or any type of foundation. And so it's kind of like Finance 101, but I wrote it in such a way that it's a handbook. So it's called Money Handbook. And I said that because you don't have to like read it from cover to cover. It depends what stage in life you are, and you can refer back to it like a handbook. So I have chapters on money mindsets, investing, debt, estate planning. I mentioned that I grew up in a Jewish household. So I talk about my faith a bit because that is a really big part of who I am and how I make decisions. And I also have a chapter on how to teach your children. So it's kind of like big brushstroke and it touches on a lot of subjects. I think it's just a really good tool to empower people to get started. And after each chapter, I have action steps like, okay, we just talked all about saving and investing. Here are some steps you can take.
Right.
Or, okay, we just talked all about debt. Like, here are some things you can do. And so I try to make it as relatable as possible because the thing about money is it's just a method. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people have passion and they have things that they get excited about. And I always want to encourage them that those are the ways to be thinking about to make you money. I think passions turn into purpose.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's really good. So just high level, where do I get the book if I want to buy it?
It's on Amazon.
Amazon?
Amazon sells 85% of all books, period, the end.
That's crazy.
Barnes & Noble went out of business a couple of years ago and got bought out.
Yeah.
When's the last time you walked into Barnes & Noble? Unless you're a mom and you're going to story time.
There, yeah.
Exactly. But
yeah,
you want a book, you're just go on Amazon and buy it.
Yeah,
they are.
And we don't even buy books when we're there. We literally just go for story time.
Exactly.
So no, that's great. So Amazon, and you can get on, I got it on Kindle version.
Yes.
So you can get
Kindle, it on Amazon, and the Audible
coming soon
is being released in 1 week.
1 week?
Yeah, and it's me. I narrated it.
Wow.
Yes, guys. I talked for hours. It was a labor of love, but I hope that it blesses you.
That's amazing because I went initially to download it hoping for an audiobook.
It's coming.
And was vastly disappointed. But here we are. It increased my IQ, so I guess that's okay. So I want to talk, you mentioned money mindsets. I'm big, and I'm not talking a lot about it yet because I'm honestly still studying it myself, but I'm finding as I'm having a lot of these conversations, some really interesting trends around the psychology of money.
Yeah.
And specifically for me, I'm identifying some really interesting things about financial trauma people have that they don't even recognize because money doesn't feel like something I can be traumatized by.
Right.
But I'm identifying these interesting trends and I'm, hearing people tell stories of, I have a friend who I talked to about this recently. And, he, the short version is, one of his earliest memories of with his parents was that they would go to the movies. He grew up poor.
Okay.
They would go to the movies and, his dad taught them that the way that they didn't bring snacks they didn't buy snacks or do anything. What they would do is they would go comb the garbage cans and grab if the popcorn was left on top, not down in it, but if it's left on top, just half eaten or whatever, grab a couple of those, dump them in and go in. And this, is a behavior or a habit that carried into his adult life that he never even realized was weird or socially unusual.
Like he would go to movie theaters and go to the trash can?
As an adult.
Did anyone say anything?
Nobody.
It's like when you have something in your teeth that your real friends say something.
I think I might have been the first one to say something to him because he mentioned it to me and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, buddy.
Wait, how old is he?
Now he's 32. And so
he's an adult.
Yeah. He's a full-blown, successful 6-figure income earning. This is my point. This guy is not hurting for money today, but he had a system that he was trained as a child that he accepted as normal, which is literally what homeless people do. Right. Like you're literally dumpster diving for snacks. And as an adult, he didn't even realize this was unusual until I was like, hey man, you understand that's not like super normal, right? And we had to have this conversation, and it was like a trauma he realized that formed these. So that's a really extreme version. A less extreme version, you talk about this a lot in your book as it pertains to teaching kids, is like growing up with a dad that always says, I can't afford that. Right? That can create these little traumas in us that form our mindset. So I want to start. Can you tell us a little bit about the $1,000 check analogy and kind of how? Because I thought that was really simply profound. And so talk to us about the analogy you use in the book. It's like the first chapter, I think.
Yes.
$1,000, somebody walks up, gives you $1,000 check.
Yes. So I gave this example in the money mindset chapter, and it was kind of to help the reader gauge let's kind of see where you're at. Because sometimes if you talk to people and you're like, hey, are you good with money? They're like, yeah, I'm cool. I make it. I'm good. Not everyone is sort of in touch with even the triggers and the traumas that they have. Yeah. Especially if they have an income and the bills are paid, they don't realize like limitations that they put on themselves. So the
For sure.
example in the book is you're in a grocery store and minding your own business, and somebody comes up to you and they're just like, hey, I just really felt like I was supposed to give you this money. And they just hand you this $1,000 check, and it's all you have to do is write your name in. And I give 3 examples of how do you feel? Are you like poverty? Like, oh, I'm going to hoard this. I'm not telling anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I just got $1,000 and like, that's it. You know, I'm putting it, or I'm going to spend it right away. And the second person was, oh man, like I don't deserve this. Like, I can't believe, why would you give me this money? Like, this is so awkward. I can't accept this. And then the third person was like, praise Jesus. There are people I need to bless. There are single moms that need groceries, and like mama needs a new outfit. Like, let's do this, you know, just like so excited. And so I just give a couple examples of like, what do you think your response would be? Because that will tell you really more about your money mindset than like what's in your bank account.
For sure.
Because some people think they're good with money because like they have some savings, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to how you think about it. Because a lot of people operate from a place of there's never enough.
Yeah.
And wealthy people can have a poverty mindset.
1,000%. I've said often that I think gluttony and poverty are the same spirit because they both have the core belief that there's never going to be enough.
Yeah. And that is the key thing that you have to detach yourself from.
Yeah.
From that lie.
Well, and to recognize, so first and foremost, it's a great analogy because I think everybody can put themselves in the grocery store thinking about what would happen to me.
Yeah.
For me, I'd feel really awkward and like try not to take it. Like that would be my immediate response is like, I'm good. Like I don't, you know.
Yeah.
But I think your response to that, to your point, reveals, first of all, it's not a good, better, best. It's not like your response to that is not a varying degree of what the best response is. It's just the reality. Like, what's your response? And then I think it's a great starting point to go, why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
Like, where was a great question would be like, when's the first time I remember feeling this way about money? And you kind of start to think through. And I think a lot of people will identify I've been asking these questions a lot. And a lot of people will tell the story about the time they were in the drive-through and mom's credit card was declined and, like all of these things. And you go, oh my gosh, I have trauma that has led me to decisions that has put me in a position that, yes, I'm responsible for my actions, but I'm not totally responsible for the outcomes because I'm forming them from a place of like from a deficit, right?
From the environment.
Yeah. And from the lack of anybody telling you it could be any different. And so I love that. I think it's a great place to start. And so if you don't get the book, re-listen to that and put yourself, think about it. Another one I'd like to talk about high level. I've always said a culture of generosity always pays for itself. And so I'm a big believer that we don't give to get, but when we give, we get. It's just how it works. It's like the law of attraction in our faith-based community, right? It's the sowing and reaping. Like there's a lot of, there's a lot of truth behind it. I particularly love the part where you talked about practicing generosity.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people think I'm either a generous person or I'm not. And I don't agree with that at all. I believe generosity is just like any other discipline. We have to practice it. So talk to us more about what your thoughts are on generosity, how it plays into the big picture, and specifically that discipline, that practice of generosity.
Yeah. Of all the financial advice and empowerment that I could give, I would say generosity outdoes all of it. It's the number one. It's the way forward. And I know you and I see eye to eye on that. We both actually have nonprofits. We both do a lot of charitable things. And so I'm like, fist pump.
Yep.
So practicing generosity. So I think it's really important to teach your children about this and to have it in your personal life. And I know people listening, some might have faith, some might not. For me, I actually am a Messianic Jew. So I'm a special Jew, you guys. I believe in Jesus. And one of the things in the Jewish culture that they did back in the day is when they would own their fields, they would keep the edges of the field available for like the widow or the orphan or like the, foreigner coming through who wasn't Jewish, so that they would have food. It was the outskirts. It was around 10% of the field. It was left for that.
Oh, no way.
And that wasn't even their tithe. That was just leave the outer parts of your field.
It's just what
and
we
that's
do.
the story that you know of Boaz. That's why she went to the field to glean. It's because traditionally they leave the outer skirts of the field for foreigners, and she wasn't a Jew. She was like one of the ites.
Wow.
So it's very much in the Jewish culture to be generous and to give, and it's like thousands of years back. And so fast forward, here I am, and I think that the thing about generosity is it keeps you from being greedy.
Mm.
And I think that's so important, because it's kind of like you want to be around someone who's humble and not like super prideful and arrogant.
Right.
And there's something about having a generous heart and thinking about other people and not just yourself that changes the ecosystem around you.
That's super good. I love that, because and also as I'm thinking through this, it's not just money.
No.
Right? Like we do it with time. I told a story. I did an episode yesterday, or we recorded an episode yesterday. I told a story of a guy who wants to get into the real estate game. He's following my content. He happens to be from Mount Shasta, which is not far from here.
Right.
And he called me, or he messaged me on Instagram. And the first thing he said was, "Can I come sweep floors in your flips and just be around what you're doing?"
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, immediate yes. Like, I don't even know anything about this guy. Like,
you're like, background check later.
Literally immediate yes, because I'm like, you get it. Like, you're bringing something to the table. You're off, and like, you might suck at sweeping floors. I don't care. The point is it's a culture, and I'm like super drawn to that. And now that guy is probably going to, not because I'm awesome, but because he's willing to be in the environment, he's probably going to become a real estate millionaire because he gets it. And he'll get to tell the story at some point about how he, reached out. And that's how these patterns of what I believe patterns of generosity are created, is understanding what you just said and making it a lifestyle. But so talk a little bit more though about, like, so practically, right? I don't have a farm that I can give 10% of the fields
to. So practically, it's a lot about when you hear of needs.
Okay.
It's a lot about hearing of needs and being able to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised when you have a willing heart to meet needs, how somehow information gets to you. Like, you don't even need to go looking for it.
Yeah.
But from a practical standpoint, I mean, we're in California, and for those of you listening, there is a homeless situation in California, and we house 50%. The state has 50% of all homeless people in America. Half of them are in California.
That's
a lot
true.
of it,
wow.
A lot of it has to do with, like, our weather's really great.
Sure.
It's like easy. And I know a lot of it's in Southern Cal, but one of the things I do is we get the Ziploc, like, freezer quarter pound bags, and we fill them with water bottles and granola bars and socks and like toothpaste and things like that. And I don't know, we probably fill up 10 at a time, and we keep them in our cars. And so whenever we pass a homeless, like, we give it to them.
That's awesome.
Especially, but this is, disclaimer, I only give it to those who have signs or ask. I wouldn't just like walk up to a homeless person, because you just never know, like, safety purposes. But if they are asking, I always, or like, keep some granola bars in your glove compartment. I know a lot of people are like, oh, but they're going to sell it and like, they're going to use it for this or that. I don't care.
Yeah.
The point is, it is literally a person in need. I am able to meet a need. I am happy to do it.
And what is that model for your kids?
Exactly. And they're always in the car with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey guys, we're going to be giving them this. Do you want to pass it to them? I'm like, they're really hungry and we have some food in this bag. Let's help them.
Super great.
It's just like.
And what's a bag cost you? $5 maybe?
10.
Yeah. Like, and so that's, I mean, I think that's a great point, I think people hear generosity, and especially if they're not like in the Christian faith, they hear like tithe in the church and they're like, oh my gosh, 10% of my income. And but it's just the simple disciplines that create that culture. That's so good. I'm going to pause for a second and ask a quick question. First of all, how are you on time?
I'm good.
So Jeremy, do you have time if we break this into a 2-part episode where we can just keep going and we'll make it 2?
Yeah, I'm good till 12:30.
That's perfect. Okay. Cause I think we're coming up on an hour. This is great. And so are you good with it?
Have we already been talking for that long? Yes, I'm good.
It's great. So I just want to make sure. So maybe I'll do like a little outro, and then does that work for you? Cool. All right. This has been amazing conversation. I really appreciate the insight, so much so that we're going to turn this into a 2-part episode with
Part
Samia.
two.
Part 2. So stay tuned, subscribe, and be connected because we'll continue the conversation next time with Samia. Do I do another intro then? Okay. You good? All right, welcome back to the Dead Presidents Club. This is the sequel episode with Samia, and I'm gonna butcher it. It's Pedalino.
It's perfect.
That was perfect.
Yeah, like a bike pedal.
Like a bike pedalino.
I married an
it.
Italian.
I love it. Well, does he make pasta?
Yes, and he has like a family recipe for meatballs that are.
It's kind of hurtful. I haven't been invited, but that's fine. This is an episode. If you haven't heard the first episode, Samia is an author, an entrepreneur, a financial whiz, and she's got some just really deep, simple wisdom on all things finance. So go back and listen to the last episode. We just wrapped up a great talk about a culture of generosity and really modeling that in a practical way, and I love that. So with that being said, let's start this episode with some really practical conversation, because I think a lot of people are like, great, these philosophies are awesome.
Right.
But like, what do I do? So I'll ask this question. I'm new. Just assume I'm new. I'm just getting started.
Okay.
You make some things really practical in your book. You use the analogy of the 3 buckets.
Yes.
Right. So tell me more about the buckets.
So in my book, I have a chapter on saving and investing. And I talk about different buckets to just keep it super simple. One of the buckets is a children's fund. Okay. So if you're a parent or a grandparent, you can contribute to this fund. It's for children. That's why it's a children's fund. It's different accounts, such as a 529 account. 529 is a college account. And you might be thinking, well, I don't know if I want to have a college account for my kid. Like, is college even going to be relevant by the time they're 18? Right. And what I would say to that is, it's still not a bad idea, because even if they don't go to college, you can roll that money into a Roth IRA for them, which then they can use for real estate.
I didn't know you could roll it into a Roth.
Yes, they just passed that this year.
Oh, that's a game changer.
Game changer. Second thing is, you can simply just cash it out.
And pay the fee.
It's like a 10% fee. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. And the third thing, if they don't go to college, is it actually can be transferred to family members. So let's say over the course of the, all the years of your child growing, there's like 20 grand in it, right? It can go to in-laws, nieces, nephews, siblings, like you're as a parent. Any type of continuing education or private education, college or public, it can be used for. Yeah. So like, surely somebody will want to use it. And if not, there's, like I said, Roth IRA.
That's a game changer. I did not know the role. I mean, that changed everything, because we set up an account for Everly. Good. We've been debating that for Elias, because, it's like, gosh, well.
You're like, they're going to take over my real estate empire.
I know, literally. I'm like.
You know what they can go to school for?
Real estate.
Contract law.
Oh, dang it.
Yes.
Contract law?
Yes.
Yeah, they can be my attorneys.
You need to learn how to read contracts. I'm friends with a Jewish family, and they require everyone to get law degrees in either real estate law or contract law. Wow. Because they own like $40 million in properties. And
if you want the money, you got to have the contract.
I mean,
that makes sense. I like it.
Read contracts.
All right. So the first bucket is kids bucket.
Yeah.
Okay. 529 plan. Super easy. You don't even have to go in and do it. You can literally do it through your bankofamerica.com or merrilllynch.com.
Super easy.
Yeah. Super easy.
Another bucket is.
Sorry, pause. One other benefit to that we've experienced is that you tell your family members about it. Grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles. They literally can contribute straight to that account. And I don't know the answer to this, but do they get a tax benefit for that?
They don't, but it depends what state you live in.
Okay.
Some states you can deduct it on your taxes when you contribute it to a 529. You just have to look it up.
Got it.
California,
yeah. So most of our family doesn't live in California, as you know. And so, a simple way, and I mean, let's be honest, Everly gets everything she needs and wants anyways. Right. So like, it's more fun to buy her toys, but
see her open a gift.
Of course. But if you're not here anyways, like, how easy is it for you just to mail a check to Merrill and it just goes to her future? Right. And so anyways, a little side.
It's true. Actually, one of the things that I do with both of our families is I ask them for birthdays and Hanukkah and Christmas is to write them a check, and I put it in their college fund. So I mentioned my husband's family is Italian, so Christmas is like a really big deal. Actually,
I'm kind of jealous you get Hanukkah and Christmas, but carry on.
And my mother-in-law did not. I mean, she wants them to be opening gifts. So I just made a deal with her, and I was like, listen, whatever you're planning on spending on the kids, give me half of it in a check, and the other half, just buy them whatever you want so you can see them open. So come to a happy medium with them, because grandparents love to see grandkids.
Yeah, that's a great point. My mom, it's the exact same thing. My mom is like all about it. She mails a check every time she gets
like,
a chance.
I gave birth to you just so I could have grandkids.
Yeah, well, but she's like all about the future piece. So she'll invest in the fun. My in-laws are like, that's the dumbest thing. I do not want to watch my kids open envelopes or my grandkids open envelopes like they're getting toys. But that's a great trade-off. And I just remembered something about you. Everly's first birthday, you mailed a check for her college fund.
I did.
I just remembered that. That's so funny because I don't even think I knew you at that point. I just remember getting this check from one of Jacqueline's friends for our daughter. And I'm like, nobody's ever given me money for a kid. Like, you know what I mean?
Literally do that for almost every friend because none of them have 529 accounts, and it makes them open one.
I think I don't remember. So our situation's a little different because Everly was adopted. And so she didn't have a social security number for almost a year.
Oh, okay.
And so I didn't have an account opened right away. So I can't remember if I had the account opened or not, but I know for a fact you were the first person to contribute to it.
I feel so honored.
I feel so blessed. I think that's awesome. So I just, as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm like, you mailed us a check. That's super funny. But anyways,
yes,
thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
Everly will.
I practice what I preach.
Well, that's right. You do.
So the next fund is your investment fund. Mm-hmm. And this is like a percentage of your income. In the book, I recommend 10%. But if like you can do more, like if you can manage to do 15 or 20, go for it.
Sure.
So this fund is to either do a stock portfolio or start saving up for down payments on real estate, or to do what you can to have some type of passive income. It's just money set aside to invest.
Yeah.
That's simply what it is. Like you choose the avenue, whether it's all of them or one.
Okay. What do you think about, well, I'll ask that question later. Carry on.
And then the last bucket is the emergency fund. I think it's really important to have a bit of an emergency fund. You know, I had mentioned in the prior episode that we did that the average person has like $6,000 or $7,000 worth of credit card debt. So what's happening is emergency comes and they charge it.
Yep.
And most of these credit cards are between 18 and 22% interest. So what happens is, you know, your windshield breaks and you're like, oh crap, I don't have $1,200. And so you charge it on your card and you're like paying $100 a month. But the problem is the interest is 22%. So you end up buying your windshield like 3 times.
Right.
So it's just really important to have some type of cushion in your checking account. I always tell everyone like 3 months is good. Some people preach 6 months. Like it's whatever you're comfortable with. The idea is things come up and things happen. Like we can't, you know, avoid bad things in life, but you can sleep better at night knowing you at least prepared for them.
I wish I knew the statistic offhand because I don't want to be a made up statistic guy, but there is a large percentage, like more than 50% of families in the US cannot survive $1,000 emergency today. Like the statistic is ridiculously high. I forget what
it was like. I read something that was like the average person, if they had a $400 emergency expense, did not have the funds. It's $400. They had to put it on their credit card.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, but like, I don't have any money left over at the end of the month. Like, how am I ever going to have an emergency fund? And so how I speak into that and encourage that person is for a short amount of time, a couple things. One, you might have to do just some type of side hustle. Like, are you a graphic designer? Do you know how to edit? Like, there's a lot of things online you can like make money from. Are you cool with like, do you have a car? Like you can do Uber, you can do Instacart, like whatever it looks like.
Apple's paying $18 a month rate or $18 an hour right now for online customer service.
Apple has customer service. Bless Apple. I love their phone. So the point is like, you're not stuck. You're not a victim.
Right.
You can find a way to have another stream of income to build up an emergency fund. You can find a way to have another stream of income to pay off credit card debt. Credit card debt is the only debt I am not for.
Yeah.
I think it's dumb. So I really encourage people to put a plan together, whether it's like 6 months or 12 months, to have no credit card debt and have an emergency fund. I actually don't suggest even investing until that's done.
Okay. I like it. So those are the 3 buckets.
Yes.
Kid bucket, investment bucket,
emergency fund bucket.
Emergency fund.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what order those happen in.
I think emergency fund is probably what you would want to do first, like have a little bit of a cushion.
Yeah.
And make sure there's no credit card debt. Whatever you have on your credit card is paid off every month. We all know the benefits. There's points. You can actually, if you don't ever use your points to travel, you can cash them in as well for money.
For sure. What do you think about a strategy? Because this is something I've helped a couple of people to do. And it's not like I wouldn't teach this as like a financial principle, but for people that already have credit card debt, they're trying to figure out how to manage that and make a plan, whatever. How do you feel about rolling those cards into 0% balance transfers?
Yeah, go for it. Can you pay it off when the 0% turns to 22 before that happens? Do it.
Well, they don't. So most of the balance transfers don't aggregate. So it's not that when it gets to 22, you have to pay the backed interest. You still get the 0%
right
timeline. So what a lot of people I've had do that, if they've got higher balances, they can't pay off in the 18-month zero interest period. It's like, okay, cool. Just go roll it again. Like you're going to pay
until you pay it
until
down.
you pay it off.
Go for it.
Yeah, because you're going to
play the system.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to pay 3 or 4% on a balance transfer fee, but 3 or 4% is a whole lot better than 18% annually.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those cards are 18, 24 months, 0%, rolls. So
I think that it's totally fine to do that as long as you have a trajectory where you're paying it down and it's not a band-aid of like, oh, I'm just going to put it on this card and like, it's just going to sit there for 24 months.
Well, and I got to admit, I've seen people realize, because they learn that this is like a creative way to access capital. And I've had a lot of people end up with more credit card debt because they did dumb things with the strategy as opposed to actually using it as a method to get things paid off. And if there's anything I'll give Ramsey credit for, is that his program helps people deal with what I think is an addiction to credit cards.
Right.
Like this isn't even a debt.
Well, it's a spending addiction.
Well, but see, I take it a step further though, because I think that if the credit card, I don't think it's a spending addiction. I think it's the addiction to the idea that it's endless money. It's because if I didn't have the credit card, I wouldn't probably be as compelled to go buy the thing. But it's this weird illusion that you
have a tool
that I don't know. So anyways, philosophically, who cares? But the point is like, yeah, credit cards are dumb. I agree with that. I think there are limited situations where you could make them work for you, but that would, in my opinion, be like finance, like 201, after you figure out the 3 buckets, after you get the stuff. If there's some creative strategy, sure, we can talk about that, but as a lifestyle tool. And
there's definitely a fine line where it starts to become an integrity issue.
Oh, talk to me about that.
I think if you're purposely rolling credit card debt over into 0% credit cards and with no intention of paying it down and using it as a strategy, I think there's a gray area now.
How?
Because if you're playing the system, but I think the goal is to not have it.
Yeah, certainly. And by the way, I'm not by any means advocating for a strategy where you don't pay off your credit card debt.
That's all I'm saying. The goal is just to pay it off. So that's it. If that is your goal, go for it. But if your goal is to not pay it off.
Yeah, if your goal is to never pay it off. Yeah.
Right, gray area.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Well, and honestly, coming back to my story in the first episode about choosing to not foreclose on my house in 2008.
Amazing.
That was, for me, that was an integrity issue. I had every reason to literally every home in my development short sold or foreclosed around me. I was the only one that didn't.
Wow.
And so we got crushed because all the comps were
like half, probably.
Oh, way worse. I bought it as a steal at $252,000. 6 months later, my tax evaluation comes in at $89,000.
Oh, that hurts.
I sold it 10 years later to the month for $2,100 more than I bought it for. It took 10 years. I know, right? I know.
It's
I'm
a
like,
win.
I'm out. And I feel super clean about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, and we lost tons of money, of course, because we were upside down in the mortgage for years and
Right.
blah, 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 blah. But my point is, for me, it was an integrity issue, not because I think foreclosing is unintegral. It's foreclosing as a financial strategy.
Right.
Is to me, there's nothing in my contract that says if I don't feel like paying anymore, I don't have to. And that was what I was opposed to. And I agree. Like if the scheme is I'm going to rack these things up to the best of my ability to never pay them off, I think maybe we've got bigger problems than whether or not your financial health is good. All right, let's move on. So 3 buckets, we talked about that. One just comment, and if you've got anything to add to this, you specifically talk in the investment bucket about becoming a learner before you choose your investment path.
Yes.
I'm a big advocate for this, but what does that mean to you?
I just think it's really important to learn and have knowledge and to invest in yourself, meaning if you join, like you're part of a mastermind group, I think that's totally stellar. I love that. I think YouTube has so much on it with resources to learn about how real estate works, how Roth IRA works, how investing in the stock market works and things like that. You can even pull up like reports on how these companies are doing.
Yeah.
And what their cash flow is and how their, what their P&L looks like. So I think it's just important to educate yourself on finance, because it is a language.
For
it's
sure.
like you have to learn and you have to have confidence in it.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid of what you don't know. So know it.
Yeah. And the language is people think they don't, people get like so overwhelmed by it. I mean, you literally just said P&L, and people are listening to this right now going, what the heck is a P&L? Right?
Profit and loss
statement. But that, I mean, it's just vernacular, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you know what it means, it just becomes no longer a big evil monster.
Yeah.
So that's great. I love that. Give me budgeting 101 in 30 seconds or less.
Spend less than you make.
Okay. How do I do it? I like it. That was 3 seconds or less. You got 28 more, 27 more.
The goal of budgeting is to have zero at the end of the month.
Okay.
Zero. So you throw the money in investing, you throw it maybe to pay down whatever debt you have, and you have some to live off of, obviously, and you throw some at giving. And the purpose is zero. And maybe you don't have debt. Awesome. You can put that percentage towards investing. It's just having different categories of where you assign your money to that best fits your lifestyle.
Okay. What do you think about this? And maybe it's semantic. Some people think it is. I don't.
Okay.
To me, the traditional method of budgeting where we assign dollar amounts to categories and try to achieve them is pretty ineffective. That's
I think it's better to do percentages.
Okay, percentages. To me, that's the same though.
Okay.
Because to me, what it feels like is I'm assigning let me take that back, because you're saying percentages of income. Okay, so that's an interesting caveat there, because a lot of people talk to me because we're in like contractor era, right? Like nobody gets consistent income. So they have to reverse engineer their budget.
Yeah.
Right. But for me, the thing that I've been helping, people as I've been talking to them is I go, hey, don't go set arbitrary spending numbers or percentages. Go back 6 months. It's going to be painful because you refuse to look at your money, but go back 6 months and write down what you actually spent in these categories and build your budget according to what your life has actually developed for you.
Yeah.
Like to me, the idea of assigning those numbers just creates a shame cycle for a lot of people because they're not achieving those numbers already.
Right.
They're getting discouraged and then they go, screw it, I'm not going to do it.
One of the things I talk about in the book is to look at your credit card or your, bank statement and to write down all your expenses. And then, obviously look at your income and compare the two and then make your budget from that. So I talk a little bit about that. Like it has to be realistic.
For sure.
And you want to put some cushion in there. Like, hey, like we're going to go on a vacation this year. And that's something called like a sinking fund. You can like put money away for future, things that you want to buy. But the point is budgeting. I actually don't even think people have to do it forever, honestly. The purpose of it is just to have discipline.
That's
and
great.
To be connected in a way to what you're bringing in and your spending habits. That's all it is. Like some people might only really need a budget for like a year. And then they're like, okay, cool. Like I got this. Like I'm not gonna.
Because you start to feel your spending habits more than even knowing the numbers, right? Like I start to know when I swipe my card for something that's out of the ordinary, I have like an awareness that that's not in my like normal ecosystem.
100%. I was out of town at a coffee shop one time and I was getting a matcha and she's like, that'll be $9. And I was like, it'll be what? It's green tea with almond milk and honey. Like, what are you talking about? So, you do sort of like, what? And so the point is, once you have habits in place of how you do spend and what your income is, that you're in more of a flow. But a lot of people who have never budgeted before and they're in credit card debt and they want to like own rental properties and they want to have a stock portfolio and they have all these aspirations, but they just like don't know how to get there. A very basic like baby step is, okay, like let's look and see what have all your expenses have been, what's your income, and this might be really painful, but like we need to look at it and make some changes. And sometimes it's not their expenses. Sometimes it's like, oh, they've like cut their Netflix and they're canceled this and that, and like still they're just like, oh, I feel
just don't
strapped.
make enough money.
It's not about your expenses. It sometimes is that you're under earning.
I love that. I've said, so here's another agree, disagree. I've said it's easier to add $500 a month to your income than it is to shave it from your budget.
Agreed.
Yeah. And people hear that and they go, okay, well, how? Well, YouTube, how to add $500 a month to my budget. And you'll find 75,000 methods to do it tomorrow. Because in the era that we're in with our cell phones and whatever, like, I mean, Ryan, who's the head of the mastermind I'm a part of, he got his start famously by flipping couches.
I love that.
Like, that's what he did. He was a pro baseball player, but they don't make any money in the minors or however that works. So he flipped couches and got it up to where he was making $8,000 a month flipping couches.
Did he get it that high?
$8,000 a month flipping couches. And that's his big claim to fame. And he's like, and then one day he woke up and he's like, wait a minute, if I'm flipping couches, like, what if I flipped other stuff like houses?
Yeah, totally.
Right. And so, so I agree with that. And I also like the idea of starting with looking at it because I mean, you're listening to this right now and you know exactly who you are that hasn't opened your bank account in 6 months, right?
They close their eyes when they log in.
They're like, they swipe their card. I do this thing to Jacqueline. I don't do it as much anymore, but I used to do this thing to Jacqueline that she hated. We'd go to like the grocery store or something and I would swipe the card and I'd go, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please.
She'd be so embarrassed.
She was so embarrassed and I loved it. And the poor clerk is like, oh my God.
This is so awkward.
And then I'd go through and I'd be like, yes, like, just a whole theatrics around it. But the truth is a lot of people live their life that way.
Yeah.
Like they're not doing
You don't need to live your life that way.
No, just look at it and then analyze it. And then you get to make informed decisions because the truth is you can have Starbucks every day.
Yeah, if you want.
If you want to have Starbucks every day, like I'm not going to tell you to not have Starbucks every day, but unless you're looking at it, you don't know what the cost of Starbucks really is to you. And so to me, it's like starting with what is my lifestyle naturally built for me? Now I can objectively compare it to what I'm earning and make decisions.
It's so funny that you just mentioned Starbucks. I went on a walk with a friend the other day. We're in Northern California. There's like a million trails here. So it's very social to go on walks here. Anyways, she said to me, she's like, Samia, I went to my credit card statement and I did search box and I typed in Starbucks and it will like tell you the total for like, 2022. Yeah. She goes, I spent $6,500 at Starbucks. I'm like, really? How is that possible? She's like, I go there like 5 mornings a week. I go through the drive-thru, I get my coffee, my croissant. It's just like habit, comfort, and she can afford it. Yeah. She's like, but what, like, I could put that in my kid's account. I could and now there's so much more I could do with that money. So she obviously now is making coffee at home. She like didn't even, sometimes what happens is when you're making money, like you don't care.
Right. Like, well, and she's empowered herself to make a decision of what has higher value to her.
Exactly.
So many people are like, gosh, I'm so ashamed that I went to Starbucks today because I know it's irresponsible, as opposed to just looking at the whole picture and going like, what are the most important things to me? Yeah. Like I order a Chick-fil-A burrito. Don't shame me. I order a Chick-fil-A burrito DoorDash. So I pay like 40% more for it than I should just about every day.
The chicken wrap?
The chicken burrito, breakfast burrito.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Breakfast burrito. No, it's worse than the chicken wrap. The chicken wrap I wouldn't be so ashamed to admit. It's a habit I have to break, but not because of financial issues, but because I need to try to be healthier. But the point is like at the end of the day, like I know what that costs me. Yeah. And I don't have a higher value threshold for something else that I could be applying that to.
The thing about it is I'm not going to put my value system on somebody else's.
Yeah.
Like we've got to get rid of the shame when it comes to money.
I love it.
You have to have the value system that is important to you and your spending is going to show it.
All right. Let's talk about the D word. The big D word.
The 4-letter D
word.
The
4-letter D word. It's debt.
Yeah.
Or as I said last time, for me, it's Dave Ramsey. But I got a few specific questions.
Has he blocked you yet?
No, but his daughter followed me on TikTok. I know. I feel like I've arrived.
She's more chill though.
I don't know her at all. And to be honest, I don't know Dave, obviously. And like at the end of the day, I've joked and called it like the Goliath syndrome. I'm allowed to punch up as much as I want. He can't come after me. So like he's too big, but it's been funny. And the truth is there's a lot about what Dave does that I think has been a huge benefit. But to believe, people are always like, well, I'll listen to Dave because he's the guy with $600 million in paid off real estate. I'm like, yeah, you understand he didn't get that by putting cash in envelopes, right? Like he got that by selling you a system. So
the thing about the Ramsey solutions is they preach a lot about mutual funds. They basically teach like buy mutual funds. Mutual funds have a lot of fees in them. Mm-hmm. And he's getting a kickback on those mutual funds as well. And so he's preaching, no debt and buy mutual funds. Okay, whatever. That's his microphone. My issue is he actually didn't build his wealth on mutual funds. He built it on real estate and owning businesses. So it's a little disingenuous to me that he's actually isn't preaching what he has done.
And he's continuing to build his wealth off of businesses that he's acquiring for affiliate revenue.
Yeah.
He bought a mortgage company. He's got
And he's
the
like,
mutual,
use these mortgage brokers. I get a kickback.
He built a real estate brokerage empire with this network of realtors that he's getting a kickback. He's got a financial solutions or like a financial planning advisory service. He's a genius.
No,
like,
it's more power to him.
Make no mistake. I don't have any issue with the hustle.
Yeah.
I just have a problem when our message is keeping a lot of people broke and we're claiming that that's how we got rich. And to your point, it doesn't feel right or real to me. And I can't judge his motive, but he says it's not a math problem. I go, well, actually, I think some of this is a math problem. There's some real math that just is pretty simple. And if people would take the time to learn it, they'd be far better off long term. So anyways, I digress on the Ramsey train, but you talk about a bit. So actually we'll continue with Ramsey. A big Ramseyism is the Proverbs. What is it? 22. The borrower is slave to the lender.
The borrower is a
you
slave
said something.
to the lender.
You said something.
Took an arrow and I was like,
you said
right in the balloon of that
I
thought.
Loved it because so for those of you that don't know, Dave Ramsey is one of his big pitches for zero debt is he quotes the Proverbs that says that the borrower is slave to the lender, and I've said a lot of times, like Colossians tells us that the employee is slave to the employer, but nobody's talking about that. But also you unpacked that in a way I've never heard before. So talk to me first about like that whole deal about how it was in Israel back then.
Okay, so in biblical times when this was written, if you borrowed money and you were not able to return it, and whatever that looked like, you bought camels and you couldn't, give the goods to pay for it, you would actually, and in that time frame, the men were the ones who picked from. It was like a patriarchal society. So it was really on the shoulders of the men most of the time, the majority of the time. You would actually have to become a slave to the person who lent you whatever it was that they lent, whether it was animals.
If you couldn't make the payments or whatever the terms were. If you couldn't make
the payment, you are now their slave, leaving your wife and children, predominantly, most likely females and whatever sons you had. And you would have to work on their property and get the wage that their slaves got until your debt was paid off. Like you literally became the slave to the lender if you did not pay them off. And so I talk about that in the book. And I was like, in modern day, if you don't pay back your mortgage, the bank's not like, hey, come be a teller and work for free. Like it's a little bit different today. And the other thing that I speak on is borrowing and lending is actually like talked a lot about in the Bible. In the Old Testament, the Lord was like, hey, Israelites, if you lend to your fellow Israelite, do not charge them interest. But if you lend to a foreigner, you can charge them interest. Like God's like talking about lending. And Jesus talks about it too. So it was never said in the Bible that borrowing money is a sin, ever. It says greed is a sin.
Yep.
So the issue at hand is sometimes people will borrow money to have bigger, better, and brighter and live lifestyles and try to, sort of put on, it's funny because on Instagram, they call it like a highlight reel, put on something that is not real so that they can feel important. It's more of an issue of when you're going into debt, is it for things that increase in value or decrease? So like homes, they increase in value. Awesome. It's an asset. An asset is anything you can convert to cash. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest like going and buying like a Louis Vuitton bag on your credit card, because chances are, even if you went to go resell it, it's going to be worth less. So whenever I teach about debt, I always come from the standpoint of, if you're going to go into debt, make sure it's for something that increases in value. Even if it's a college education, if it will increase your value in the marketplace and you get paid more, like do it.
Yeah. And that's a whole conversation we can unpack on a future
That's
episode.
Gonna be episode 3.
That's going to be episode 3. I love it. So what you're talking, first of all, I love because what you're saying is context is critical. And that's been the big beef I've had with it, is that we're actually leveraging a small portion of scripture out of context without full historical understanding or explanation to make a point that isn't entirely true. And so I love that approach. You also just covered it, right? The difference between good debt and bad debt, right? I think you just said it brilliantly. If it buys me an appreciating asset, if it's something that creates more money for me,
Great.
I can call it good debt. If it adds value to my life, monetary value, not perceived value, adds monetary value to my life, it's probably good debt.
Totally.
If it's something that depreciates or only adds imaginary value to my life, it's probably
imaginary
bad
value.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned in the book, I gave an example. I was in finance for many years as a financial advisor, but after that, I actually transitioned into fashion, and I owned a clothing store with a friend of mine.
Oh, no way.
A women's clothing store. Had it for 6 years, and sold it because I started having babies. But the point is, when we had the clothing store, we wanted to go into a bigger space, and we borrowed $50,000 so that we could do the build out. But the point of this is, when we went into the bigger retail space, we were able to add like a shoe section and a whole denim bar, because we had more space. We could bring in more brands and sell more to the customer walking in.
Denim bar is like the trendiest thing you've said so far. I love that. Carry on.
So I used to always tell the girls that worked for me, I'm like, 5 items a customer, head to toe, shoes, jeans, shirt, purse, jewelry, do it, head to toe. So the point is, our sales increased 60% that year.
Wow.
Just because we had so much more to sell. And we were able to pay that loan down that year.
Yep.
So I have no issue with like short-term debt that gives you the ability to increase your income. And after that, like we were at that same level.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like we increased to 60, it stayed at that level.
And the debt
was
fell
paid,
off your
the debt
balance
fell
sheet.
off, and the rest you get to pocket or reinvest or do whatever you want to do with. So it's definitely, you have to be strategic about it. There is a level of responsibility when it comes to wealth. It's a big responsibility. And I think that people have to just like take it serious. It's not necessarily about owning a different car for every day of the week.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point. And everybody's, like Grant Cardone's been like talking a lot lately about, have you seen this stuff where he's talking about like, these people roll up to my house or roll up to these meetings in their Lamborghinis. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, as a billionaire that's just like not impressed with your Lambo, But I think people think that that's the measure of success. I've said it this way: financial freedom or wealth or whatever the language, the buzzword you want to put on it, for me is not a number. It's, I get to do what I want, when I want, how I want. That's all it is. And for some people, that's 50 grand a year and everything paid off. That might give them that freedom. I doubt it, but for some people it might. For me, I've got my number. I know that I have to create an ecosystem that allows me to be truly free. Yeah. And I think that's the difference. Good. The other thing I love that you covered is the avalanche versus the snowball. So high level debt snowball, if it, as a strategy to pay off your debt, right? The Ramsey snowball. He's the one that coined the debt snowball. I mean, I don't think it's horrendously awful, but if we're looking at it on numeric value, it's not the best way. But what are your thoughts? Or talk to us first about the snowball versus the avalanche, and what are your thoughts on which is better for? I mean,
most people kind of do a combination of both. One is just simply pay off the debt that's the highest interest. And then the other is pay off the smallest debt first, so you can like have wins. Because human nature, like we want to win.
Psychology. Yeah.
It's like psychologically, pay off the $1,000 credit card first, even if it's only like 10% interest versus the one that's 22. So it's up to you. I think a lot of people, I explain both, but in the end, people usually just do a combination of both.
See, we need to create a third category. You need to help me coin this, because I want a category where we take all of the debt and we balance transfer it into a 0% interest card, and we just pay that card off as quick as we can.
At no interest.
At no interest.
Where can we get no interest?
Yeah. Well, listen, if anybody's listening that can get me sponsorships, I can tell you all the places that you can get no interest. No problem at all.
There you go.
All right. Last topic, and then we'll wrap up. I just want to talk quickly about teaching kids about money.
Okay.
And actually, let me just ask you, because I love what you said. We talked about this earlier too a little bit, but you talked about being careful with your words, right?
Yes.
Like eliminating things like I can't afford it out of our vocabulary, I think is huge. The psychology, because the things that we do around money today form the minds of our children and how they will operate in the future. And we're all operating at some level. Well, I shouldn't say that we're all operating from a deficit, but at some level, we're all operating from a set of environments that were outside of our control. And so now we have to be aware of the environments we're creating based upon our experiences, right? So talk to me a little bit about just high level. And then I want to tell you an idea that I have that I'm going to try to do for my kids. I want to get your thoughts on it.
You mentioned not to say I can't afford it or we can't afford it to your kids. And I talk about this in the chapter where I give suggestions on how to teach your kids about money, saving, giving, and investing. But the reality is you can afford it. It's just what you're choosing to afford.
Love that.
So I encourage parents to tell their kids, well, actually, we're going to be using money on dance practice or soccer or bringing your friends to the movies or that vacation you want to go on for spring break, or because you are spending money on things. You are affording things. You're just choosing not to spend it on whatever particular thing that they say. And I think like I came from a generation from that of like, oh, we can't afford it. Like that was like, you know, the 80s baby. And really probably before that too, because my parents were like depression.
Right.
So a lot of it is like passed down. Traditions are just simply things that are passed down that are really mindsets.
Yeah.
And so it's breaking through that and just having a different language around it so that you don't create fear around money with your kids. Because you're really the first person to teach them about the ecosystem of money.
Yeah.
And our words are powerful. I mean, kids are little sponges. The other thing I talk about in that chapter is an allowance system versus, I guess you could say like chores. So like one they get paid for and the other is like core responsibilities. So I'm like a really big believer in core responsibilities and an allowance system. I think core responsibilities are just like, it keeps order in your house, like make your bed, put the dishes away, help with the trash.
You do that for free because you live here.
Yes. And it helps them learn how to serve and not get anything in return.
Yep. It
kind of just creates something in their little, you know, emotional well-being. The second is the allowance system. And that's more like, you know, it could be $1. It could be $5. Like it depends how old your child is, but it's like, did they wash your car? Are they like mowing the lawn? Are they reading a book they don't have to read for school? Did they get an A in a class they worked really hard for? It's just rewarding them for things. And what happens is you end up being like their first boss. And with that money, you can teach them to give and to save. And so it just starts it at a young process just so they can start to understand, oh, like this is how money works. I need it to purchase things.
Right.
And there's something about having skin in the game when you go to buy something versus just mommy and daddy buying it for you. And the last thing that I'll say about that is something else I speak on, which I think is really powerful with kids, is matching funds.
Yeah, you did talk about that.
So when I was around 14 years old, my dad 100% had the money to buy me a car. But he sat me down and he said, you can get a job and I will match whatever you save. And whatever that is, we will go see what kind of car we can afford, you know, with that money. So I got a job. I was hostessing. I was babysitting. I saved money for 2 years and he matched it. And I went and got a little like Mitsubishi Eclipse and I called her Princess and she was like teal. It was awesome.
That's great.
So the point is I took really good care of that car. I like washed it on Sundays and, you know, you'd like take pride in it. And so I just think it's important. And some things won't be matching funds. Like if you can help your kid with the down payment on their house, awesome. If you can like help give them a beautiful wedding, great. But when they're growing up, it doesn't have to be a big thing like a car. It could be like the new Nikes that they want. They're like $150. And you're like, you're 8 years old. I'm not buying it. You can save money.
Right.
I'll match it with you.
Yeah.
Whatever you think is appropriate. It just teaches them like, okay, what can I do to like make money? So that I can buy the thing that I want.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you like going back to the, you know, we can't afford it. I've always said that you can always pay for what you prioritize.
That's so good.
Teaching kids.
You need to write a book too.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not. We'll see.
We can get you a ghostwriter.
That might help. You know, my value system is not in writing.
You talk, they'll type.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. But you can always pay for what you prioritize, and I think that that's true at every level. And that's a principle I want my kids to understand: is this isn't an affordability issue. This is a value issue.
Yeah. Where
am I going to put my value? And so I think that that's super great. And so here's what I'm thinking about doing. This is one of the goals that I have this year, and I want to get your thoughts. So I do the stuff automatically. I do the 529 plan. Right. I hope, you know,
you're like a shining example. You came from the banking industry.
I know, but I'm like all my banker friends are already texting me. They're seeing some of my content. They're like stressed out. They're like, you've gone off the rails, man. Like, are you going to be okay? You know, and so it's pretty funny because I'm like, I should have some different financial belief systems than I do, spending as much time in banking as I did. But here I am anyways.
The matrix didn't break you down.
Yeah, exactly. Continue. So I've done the 529 plan, despite the fact that I'm not even totally convinced it's not like the best solution, but I did it.
But you're like, I'm doing something. I feel like I'm being a responsible parent.
It checks a responsibility box for me and it engages my family, which I love.
Yeah.
And so that's happening. Aside from that, though, I had this idea, and this is my goal this year, because we buy a lot of real estate.
Right.
We're big into real estate.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to buy my daughter turns 3 next month.
Okay.
I'd like to buy her first home. We'll buy it together in partnership.
Fun.
She'll
You're
help.
like putting her on the LLC.
I'll put her on the LLC. I'll do the whole thing.
Oh, I love this.
So we'll put her on it. She can help me at her age appropriate.
She needs to pick out paint colors.
This is my point.
Yep.
So she's going to do all the age appropriate stuff. I'm going to find the deal, right? Because
Yeah,
I have to do that. But she'll help me find the finishes and pick out paint colors
this is gonna
and
be
choose
really good content
tile.
for Instagram.
I know, right?
She's so cute.
She is so cute. But also she'll do age appropriate labor, like picking up garbage. And she loves to pick up stuff and put it in the garbage can. And oh, by the way, fun little tax fact that I can actually pay my children up to $12,000 and some change annually tax free, not only as a write off for my business, but tax free income to them as long as it goes to an account with their name on it.
Yep,
so she will be paid for her age appropriate work that she does on this house. And as she grows, she will learn new responsibilities for managing the property, whether it's, as she gets older, she'll learn repairs, and she'll learn tenant screening, and like just as it progresses with her in age, what's appropriate. And sure, I'm going to be managing this thing, right? Like along the way, if it makes sense for us to 1031 it into another asset or trade it up. But my idea is this is her property or her investment strategy. She's going to learn how to manage it at the level she's at through her young life. And when she turns 18 or whatever the appropriate outcome is, she's going to get to do with it what she wishes.
It's great.
What do you think?
I love it.
Okay. I'm glad you said so, because some people are like, you're just enabling, but I'm like, no, I feel, because I want her to earn it. But at the same token, I do as a dad have this like deep desire to give her everything that I, can. Right. And to me, it's like it checks both boxes. I'm like, I feel like I'm giving her something that would be considered extravagant. And I realize if you're listening, you're like, I could never do that. Like, I understand that like we have some luxury to be able to do that in our ecosystem, but you could do that at any level, to your point. Like, I think it's just another version even of the matching thing you're saying. Like,
some parents, you have grandparents who buy stock certificates for their grandkids.
Yeah.
You have parents who, you mentioned the money has to go into joint accounts. So I said UTMA, and what that is, it's a unified transfer minor account. It's simply a joint account with a minor, and you as the parent are the guardian, because they're under 18, they can't actually have their own account. So the point is, you can have a joint account with them, and you can actually put real estate in that account.
Oh, interesting.
And you can put stocks or ETFs in that account. I wouldn't do mutual funds because the fees are too high. But that is something you can set up like at the bank.
That's
easily.
great.
Yeah.
Well, and you just gave me an idea too, because I'm funding her 529 plan at like $500 a month or something.
Okay.
And I think that's right. But if I'm paying her $1,000 a month,
that can go into the 529.
She can fund her own 529.
Tax free.
Tax free.
I love it.
I just saved a bunch of money.
Well done.
$500. All right.
I'm glad we could process that together.
Thank you so much. All right. So that's my idea. I'll talk to you in a year. We'll see how it goes.
Great.
She might just be terrible to work with, and then I'll take the house back.
I don't know. She's pretty bossy. I think she'd be a good project manager.
It's true. We were out on one of the projects yesterday, and she walks up to the tile guys. The guys were putting in tile, and she's like, "Looks good." I was like, where did you learn this?
You need someone to follow her around with the camera. It's going to be really good.
It's going to be great content. All right. So a few fun questions, and then I'll close with an agree, disagree, and we'll be out of here.
Okay.
All right. And you can pass. So I'm just going to be super invasive, and you can just say pass if you don't want to answer. What's the most amount of money you've ever made in a year?
Pass.
Okay. Net worth?
Pass.
Okay. All right. I want to hear.
I'm not Grant Cardone. I don't like rally off.
That's
numbers.
Fine. It's fair.
I'm not selling anything. Nobody needs to know what I'm worth.
That's fine. We'll find out. We'll find out at some point. We'll blast it out there. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
What's the biggest and most costly mistake you've ever made financially?
Ooh, that's a good one. Biggest and most costly mistake financially. I don't know if I would categorize it under mistake, but
learning experience.
I wish I would have bought more real estate in my early 20s.
That's fair. I wish I wouldn't have sold any real estate ever in my life. So I feel you. If you could start it all over again, what would you do different in business or in finance beyond what you just shared about real estate?
What have I done differently in business or in finance?
If you could start all over again, what would you do different?
Oh man, that's a good one. You know, it's hard because I didn't love being in finance. It's almost kind of like a suffocating environment, especially for a woman. It's very predominantly men. And I was actually in banking before finance. I was in commercial lending at Wachovia before I transitioned to being a financial advisor. And those were like really tough years for me. It was good from an income standpoint,
Sure.
but then it was also really hard. And I got into fashion and just like came alive.
Oh.
Like I loved it. I loved the buying trips. We'd go to Italy. We'd import clothes. I'd go to New York on buying trips. Like it was so much fun.
Do you think it's because it like checked a creative box that you didn't get?
Probably.
Because when I went, I did the same thing coming out of banking into music. And I just loved, we traveled and we played.
So much fun.
And it was all, but for me, what I realized is there was a part of my creativity that I just didn't get to explore.
It was like being stunted.
Yeah.
And so I think back and I was like, man, I should have just gotten to fashion to begin with and like maybe launched a line or because I still have a good financial backbone and understanding. But at the same time, because of being in finance all those years, I was able to gain so much knowledge firsthand. Like I was in the thick of it. I was immersed in it. It was like complete immersion.
Yeah.
And so I was able to write a book and now I teach and I do guest speaking and I'm able to help a lot of people. So it's kind of a hard question because I'm like, man, fashion would have been so much more fun. But because of the path that I ended up on, so many people are now being helped from it.
You'd be in Paris or something right now.
Probably. Milan.
Fair enough. All right. Last question, and then we'll do agree, disagree. What, if anything, would be like just one thing you'd want to leave with listeners on a show like this?
One of the things I would want to encourage people with is that they're not stuck. And that even if they come from a lineage or generational poverty, that it can stop with them. They can be the one that makes the change. And it's not just like praying it away. It's actually like doing the thing and taking the steps to forge a path.
Yeah.
For those who come behind you.
I love it. Micro steps equal macro outcomes.
Just like start.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Here's our game of agree, disagree, rapid fire, no context. Are the markets going to crash? Are we having 2008 over again?
Disagree.
Okay. Dave Ramsey's in the Illuminati.
I hope not.
Okay. I kind of hope so. I don't know. We are currently entering into a recession.
Agree. We're already in one.
Okay. I like that. Your house is not an asset.
Well, you can convert it to cash. So
is it an asset? Is it an asset before you convert it to cash?
No.
Okay. So it's not an asset.
But it is because you can convert it to cash.
I only have a guarantee of cash conversion once I actually do it.
You're right. Like if you own a stock, it's way more of an asset than a house. Because a stock immediately can convert to cash.
Yeah. And nobody's ever foreclosed on a stock.
Correct. A house, like you need a buyer.
Yeah. And ultimately, if it costs, this is my definition of an asset. If it makes me money every month, it's an asset. If it costs me every money.
Based on that definition, it's not an asset.
Right. But I'm not asking you to adopt my definition. I'm curious your thoughts. So asset or not?
It's an asset.
Okay. All right. She says it's an asset. You heard it here. Student loans for non-specialty tracks. So,
bad idea.
All right. My point was student loans for non-specialty tracks are dumb. Agree, disagree?
Agreed.
Okay, cool. Traders are losers, specifically self-directed or day traders.
I don't like to call anyone names.
Okay, but when I say, okay, that's fair. That's fair. Losers, though, I mean in the literal sense. They lose money.
Oh, agree.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I don't think they're losers as human beings. No, to be clarified. All right, Samia, this was super fun.
Yeah.
You're brilliant.
As are you.
Well, I don't know about that, but it was
good to spar.
I know. I love it. And I hope that you come do another one again.
Yeah, be fun.
And more importantly, I hope that I can get you. We started an online community, private community. We're talking all things money. A lot of people are wanting to learn about real estate and things like that. I hope I can get you to come and just do a call and talk about just your wisdom with those guys as well. That'd be really fun.
Is this your Facebook community?
Facebook community. Yeah, we're calling it the club.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Are you invited to the cool club?
You get to, the cool club of all us broke people trying to get rich together. No, I'm just kidding. The Dead Presidents, you can follow us online, Instagram, TikTok, and the like. But appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.